Rashad Penny wasn't around for the end of practice, but the only word from the team is that he should be okay. The Seahawks conducted one of their heavier-hitting practices of training camp Monday with lots of emphasis on the running game and short yardage situations as well as the usual 2-minute and red zone drills. That segues into a scheduled day off Tuesday and then the beginning of something of a game week of preparation for Saturday night's sojourn against the Chargers in Los Angeles, or Carson, to be more accurate. Here are the highlights of what I saw, heard and thought, and here are some other nuts and bolts of what happened today at practice from Mike Vorel. Penny, Carson sit out late, leaving lots of work for backup RBs. Rashad Penny, the Seahawks' first-round pick, didn't take part in the final team session, and with Chris Carson getting the day off as well and C.J. Prosise out, that left all the carries for Mike Davis, J.D. McKissic and recently signed Gerald Holmes. It was unclear if anything was wrong with Penny. Coach Pete Carroll didn't speak to the media afterward, but offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer did. Asked if Penny was okay, Schottenheimer said, "I think so," without elaborating. Carson was on the sidelines and in pads, and did some conditioning work, and it's unclear if there was anything wrong with him or if he was just getting a day off. Prosise was also on the sidelines but was not in pads. As noted, the Seahawks are off until Wednesday, so any official word on if anything is up with Penny may not come for a few days. Frank Clark looking close to a return. Defensive end Frank Clark got back in the field extensively Sunday, but it was more meaningful when he did so again Monday as the practice featured full contact hitting throughout. Clark, who had been limited early in camp while recovering from off-season hand surgery, appeared to handle it all just fine as he was on the field with a number 1 defense for the final team session. During that session, a 2-minute drill, the starting defensive line featured Clark, Jaron Reed, Rasheem Green and Brandon Jackson. Brandon Marshall again working with the first-unit veteran receiver. Brandon Marshall continues to be one of the biggest wildcards in camp for the Seahawks. He again got some work with the starting unit and thought he had a touchdown catch in an early team session. He was ruled to be juggling the ball before he got both feet in bounds and then slid out of bounds. But Marshall also continues to be limited, and during the final team session the starting receivers were Tyler Lockett, Jaron Brown and Marcus Johnson. It makes sense that Marshall works with the first unit since if he makes the team that's who he is going to work with, and with the team limiting his reps it makes sense to have him spend those getting chemistry with Russell Wilson. Marshall officially played 7 snaps in Thursday's opener against the Colts without getting a target. Expect the Seahawks to want him to play a bit more and get more involved against the Chargers. Offensive lines further solidifying. I noted Sunday that the offensive lines appeared to be taking hold following Thursday's game, and with injuries to Jamarco Jones and Isaiah Battle knocking those 2 players out for a while, Jones for an extended time. The number 1 line Monday was the same as it has been for each of the previous 12 practices and Thursday's game, and for now should likely just be considered the starting line: Dwayne Brown, Ethan Pochak, Justin Britt, DJ Fluker and Jermaine Ifedi. The number 2 line on Monday was also stable throughout, going from left to right: George Fant, Reese Odhiambo, Joey Hunt, Jordan Roos and Willie Beavers. J.R. Sweezy also remains out with an ankle injury suffered in his first practice after re-signing with the Seahawks a week and a half ago. For now, if you're trying to guess who is going to make the initial 53-man roster, probably go with 8 to 9 of the players from the 2 OLs listed there and Sweezy and Battle. Dante Johnson gets a little more work. Trey Flowers ran with the starters at right cornerback again today throughout practice, with Byron Maxwell, Nico Thorpe and Trevon Redd all remaining out. However, former 49er Dante Johnson, who started all 16 games for San Francisco last season, again got some decent work as he continues to work his way back from off-season foot surgery. Defensive coordinator Ken Norton said after practice Johnson got about 10 to 12 snaps, which he said was too few to really make much of an assessment on. But assuming Johnson gets more and more work, then you'd also assume he'll play some on Saturday and possibly become that much more of a factor in that position competition. Flowers has impressed, but that's also still a lot to ask for a rookie who played safety in college to step right into a starting role, and you're probably still better off assuming one of the more experienced players gets the first starting nod. But the Seahawks have obviously shown no reluctance to shake things up this season, so you never know. The rest of the secondary has remained the same of late, with Bradley McDougald at strong safety and Tedrick Thompson at free and Shaquille Griffin at LCB and Justin Coleman at the nickel. Dorian Stringfellow making a move. The back end of the Seahawks receiver group remains among the most intriguing and competitive on the team. As noted, Marshall's situation will either open up a spot for another young player to make it or close one off. If you assume Marshall makes it along with Doug Baldwin, Lockett and Brown, then the rest of the group could be fighting for just 2 spots. Johnson and 2017 draft picks David Moore and Amara Darboh, who was back in pads on Monday but didn't do anything in the team sessions, would seem to still have the lead in the battle for those spots. But word has been that the Seahawks have been impressed with Stringfellow, who began his career at UW before moving on to Ole Miss. I detailed that move and what he had to say about it a few years ago here. The Seahawks have been enamored with Stringfellow since before the 2017 draft and were finally able to get him in the spring. Against the Colts, he had 1 catch for 15 yards playing with the number 2 offense. He's still running with the 2s and 3s in practice, but he has also continued to make plays. Monday he had a leaping grab for a catch over Thompson during a team session, showing the ability to use his 6'2", 209-pound frame to his advantage that the team wants to see. Given the overall depth at the position, you'd have to consider Stringfellow is still on the outside looking in. But if Darboh's issues getting on the field consistently continue, and depending on how things work out with Marshall, Stringfellow could loom as an option for a bigger receiver. Odds and ends. In your daily kicker update, Jason Myers handled all the kicks out of the holds of John Ryan, continuing to apparently illustrate that Seattle has maybe settled on a first-team kicking battery of Sebastian Janikowski and Michael Dixon. Myers went 2-4, missing his first 2 kicks, a pat and then from 43 yards, before making one solidly from 53 and then another of about 40 SIH to end the practice. As noted, Maurice Alexander was in pads to begin practice and did some early work, but he did not take part in team sessions. You have to figure the Seahawks need to see something substantial out of him at some point in the next few weeks to see if he is a legit contender for the other starting safety spot. Free agent tight end Kyle Carter is a long shot to make the roster, but he had maybe the most emphatic spike of training camp after scoring a TD on a throw from Austin Davis to end a 2-minute drill drive.